Okay, let's get started. My name is Kaylin King, and I am a program officer with the Cultural Investment Portfolio Program at the Mass Cultural Council. My pronouns are she, her, and for anyone calling in or who might need a description, I am a 30-something blonde woman with a red animal print jacket. You will notice that there are auto-generated captions at the bottom of the screen and that today's webinar is being recorded. If you need any other accommodations to fully participate today, feel free to send me a message in the chat. We are happy to be joined today by friends from SMU DataArts who will be leading the presentation. Mass Cultural Council has worked with DataArts for many, many years now, and all organizations in the cultural investment portfolio and gateway programs are required to enter a new cultural data profile into their system every year. That means that we now have more than a decade of research for Massachusetts organizations in their system, which is incredibly useful for research at a state and national level, and really helps us with our advocacy too. You might not know that DataArts has a bunch of analytics reports and features that you individually can use to look at trends and benchmark your organization. And that's what we are here to learn about today. But before I hand it off to our friends from DataArts, I want to take a quick minute to introduce my new colleague, Lillian, who is also joining us today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I am very excited to be here. I just started with the Mass Cultural Council a couple of weeks ago, but before that, I was actually working for an organization on the development side who was part of the CIP program. So I have used DataArts for many years and have firsthand experience of how invaluable these analytic tools are. So I'm really excited to be here and be part of this webinar. And I use she, her pronouns, and I am an almost 30 lady in with salt and pepper hair, let's say, and gold glasses. And again, thank you all for being here. And I'm going to hand it over to Monica at SMU DataArts now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Willie, and thank you, Kaylin, for such a warm welcome. And thank you all who are joining us virtually for our webinar, Data at Work, an introduction to SMU DataArts Analytic tools. Again, my name is Monica Williamson. I am the Engagement Associate at SMU DataArts. My physical description, I am a cisgendered African-American woman. I am wearing a Black blouse with short twisted hair and red lips. I am joined today by my two amazing colleagues, Ben Eisenhower, who is our support center specialist, who will be assisting with some of our Q&A. And Ben, I'm going to pause so that you can share your physical description.
Yeah, hi, my name is Ben Eisenhower. My physical description is I am a Caucasian cisgender male in my late 20s with short brown hair and brown facial hair.
Thank you, Ben. And I also want to introduce Rochelle Burson, who is our programs and office coordinator, who will be assisting with our questions and answers as well. Rochelle, if you could provide your physical description, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Rochelle. I am a white cis woman in my 30s with brown and pink shoulder length hair and black and silver glasses.
Thank you both. Before we begin, I do want to acknowledge the lands that we're on today. While we come together on a virtual platform, I would like for us to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands for which we all call home. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit and Métis and First Nations people. If you would like, I do welcome you to use the chat feature to share your own personal land acknowledgement. We specifically at SMU DataArts honor the Apache, the Caddo, the Comanche, the Cush-Ata, the Tonkawa, the Wichita, the affiliated K'iche', Waco, Taiwakoni, and Lenape peoples, upon whose traditional territories SMU DataArts now exist. For some quick housekeeping, during today's presentation, we will keep everyone on mute, and that's just to ensure the best sound quality and to minimize any background noise. We do ask that you do take a moment to explore some helpful features within Zoom, and that's the Q&A and chat feature. Both of these icons are on your Zoom dashboard. For any questions that you have about today's content, please just drop a question in the Q&A. We will have some moments within our time together to answer those. And again, Ben and Rochelle will be answering those for us. And if you have any responses or comments, feel free to utilize the chat feature. And again, if you're having any technology issues, our team will be so excited and happy to assist you. And if you would like to activate closed captioning that Caitlin talked about earlier, that is also available to you. You'll simply click the CC icon on your Zoom dashboard. You'll be prompted to view closed captioning by live transcript or by live feed. And if you, again, need any assistance with this, our team is happy to assist you. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. And for us to focus, I'm going to go ahead and stop my video. I know many of you have entered your data, or maybe you're in the process of entering your data into the cultural data profile as a part of your grant application. Today, we're going to talk about why SMU DataArts does the work that we do and how you can put your data to work using some of our resources beyond the grant application process. At SMU DataArts, we love data, but we're not interested in data for data's sake. Our core mission is to empower art and cultural leaders, and data is the medium that we use to accomplish that goal. We work with over 12,000 art and cultural organizations nationwide, and we hear stories daily from participating organizations that truly illustrate the power of the arts and cultural sector. There is so much about our sector that cannot be measured, but we are interested in using data on the aspects that can be measured to support organizational health so that your work can be sustained over time. So SMU DataArts, we do that by collecting data, analyzing it, and providing insight and tools to the field. Many of you are here because you have successfully completed your cultural data profile, and congratulations and thank you for all of that work. I want to start by looking at a little bit about why we collect those particular data points in the way that we do. First, your data can help you make connections across the operational areas. We collect data about your finances, your staffing, your programs, and even your space. And the cultural data profile, you have all these different types of data collected in one place. And this allows you to assess performance holistically and make connections across the different areas of your work. Next, you can make comparisons within the sector. This is because we collect data in one standard format, which allows for comparison from organization to organization. And finally, you can understand trends over time. This is because we collect longitudinal data, which means that it's in the same format year after year. So as you enter your data going forward, or as you've been entering your data with us for a long time, your DataArts account will grow in value as a resource for long-term planning at your organization. Now, that was some background on why we collect the data that we do, but the rest of our time together is an opportunity for me and my team to share some ways that this data can be useful to you and your organization. We'll talk about the different tools that are available to help you access insights about the field and your own organization. We'll start by exploring sector-wide research. We'll then look at each analytic report available to you, the KIPI Dashboard, and some additional resources and tools. But we'll start with some sector-wide research. The research team at SMU DataArts regularly takes a look at the data we collect from organizations like yours, alongside data from other sources to provide reports that shed light on important trends. First, I want to take a quick walkthrough on how we're able to provide those insights. And it starts with the data that you've been entering into the cultural data profile. So each year, you or maybe someone at your organization enters your financial, programmatic, and workforce data into the cultural data profile. And around the country, Many of your peers are also doing the same thing. As more and more organizations participate, our data set becomes richer. Our research team also connects your organizational data to data from other sources like 990 data or census data and data about your ticketing to create a model for the entire sector. Our research team uses that data from over 12,000 organizations spanning many disciplines, organizational sizes, states, as well as external sources. And this allows us to see trends and enable important knowledge about the sector. So I'll talk about some of that research. And the first type of research that we do is a series of ongoing reports that monitor trends over time. These ongoing reports focus on core areas of importance for many art organizations: marketing, fundraising, the bottom line and working capital, and earned revenue. Our research team periodically returns to these 4 topics as new data is added to our system over time. I'll take a look at our most recently updated ongoing report, and that's the working capital report. Working capital is a measurement of the organization's liquidity that represents its unrestricted resources available to meet day-to-day obligations. It's a simple calculation of unrestricted current assets minus current liabilities. Months of working capital is a useful metric that allows us to see how long an organization can survive at its current expense size absent of revenue. This report takes a look at data collected from over 1,000 art organizations to reveal that most cultural groups had inadequate working capital pre-COVID-19. Each of these ongoing reports share a similar structure. First, the report will start with some key takeaways about the topic within the sector, and by focusing on 1 or 2 key metrics. The report also looks at trends over time, or how these metrics have changed over the last 3 years. And finally, the report analyzes what factors drive performance in this area for art and cultural organizations. And throughout the report, we also break down different metrics for different sectors or disciplines, different size organizations, and different types of markets around the country. I want to show you a couple of examples. So we're looking at some key takeaways about the working capital. And again, that is a key metric that looks at months of working capital. This graph takes a look at months of working capital, but it's broken down by discipline. By examining results by art sector, we can see that the overall average of 5 months of working capital is driven by art museums and music organizations. All other sectors' working capital index averaged less than 4 months. Art museums recorded the highest level of working capital and also the highest level of average of expenses. General performing art organizations, as well as dance and opera companies, had the lowest average months of working capital. It's worth noting that this data is before the pandemic and is in some ways a testament to how hard the sudden loss of earned revenue hit and impacted many sectors. As more organizations continue to enter their data into the cultural data profile, we've begun the process of seeing the full picture of the pandemic and the financial hardship many organizations have experienced, and even how they've overcome those hardships. Next, the report breaks down the metrics of months of working capital by organizational size. This graph shows that smaller organizations tend to have more months of working capital. As organizations increased in size, their unrestricted current liabilities increased in proportion to their unrestricted current assets. Larger organizations' relative level of unrestricted current liabilities limited their working capital. And as a bit of a side note, on average, only large organizations had access to readily available cash and investments that exceeded the amount captured as unrestricted current assets. And again, this is pre-pandemic. Finally, we look at one key takeaway, and that is how BIPOC serving organizations compared to organizations that do not serve BIPOC communities. And for reference, BIPOC references Black, Indigenous, people of color. Overall, organizations that serve general audiences had higher average of working capital than BIPOC organizations. But when we looked at the median or the midpoint range, we saw a different story. A majority of BIPOC organizations were more liquid than most non-BIPOC groups, with 2.1 months for BIPOC organizations and 1.2 months for non-BIPOC organizations. We've just taken a look at our most recent ongoing report, but at SMU DataArts, we also publish an array of white papers. These are one-time explorations of topical questions ranging from how to improve your organization's working capital to why the concept of a healthy organization is not the same for all art organizations. I want to show you quickly how to find these reports within our system. And I'm starting at the SMU DataArts homepage, our website. You'll find the Learn tab at the top, and you'll click the drop-down menu where you'll find reports. Our most recent reports will be listed here in the drop-down menu. Having seen the broad trends and the many reports to explore, you may be wondering, how does your organization fit into this picture? And that's where SMU DataArts Analytic Reports come in. Analytic reports contain many of the same metrics and data points as our sector-wide reports, but they're calculated specifically for your organization. They contain the data from your completed cultural data profiles, and they're formatted in an easy-to-read way. Each analytic report highlights one aspect of your organization, one type of financial statement, or a group of data organized around a central theme. Our analytic reports fall into three categories: annual, trend, and comparison. Each version of the analytic report allows for unique data and perspective of your organization's performance. So starting with the analytic report, this report provides a summary of your organization's financial activity, program activity, staffing data, and attendance via a series of graphs and tables. This report can be a valuable communication tool that can help executive directors, board members, staff better understand important high-level financial and programmatic information about your organization. This report can also be useful to you and your staff as you may plan for your future based on your organization's past performance. Situations where you may find the annual report useful could be a strategic planning process. You could use it as a starting point for thinking systematically about your organization's past and future. You could also use it in board meetings. For example, you may include this annual report in your board book for a summary of 2 years' finances. It could be a great way to help new staff learn about what's happening in the big picture happenings at your organization. And finally, you can share it with prospective donors in donor meetings. There are many ways that you could utilize this report. I want to first show you how to find the report within our system. So this is your SMU DataArts dashboard. When you log into the platform, this is where you'll start, and it's where you do almost everything that you need to do within our system. We are now looking at the dashboard with 3 years of completed data, which you can see in the section called Your Surveys. Once you've submitted your data for a single fiscal year, you are immediately able to access SMU DataArts Analytic Reports. To run the analytic reports, you'll click the Analytics in the navigation menu. And on the Analytics page, you'll see the three report types that we talked about earlier: annual, trend, and comparison. And for this example, we'll run an annual report, and then we'll select the years that we would like to see included in the report. You can select up to 3 years when running an annual report. Once the report generates, you'll see a preview on your screen, a window that'll let you open or save the report in PDF format. A notifications area is on your upper right, and it'll let you know when your report is ready. And that's helpful if you find yourself navigating to another screen on our website. Now, this is an example of an annual report, and this report provides an overview of your organization's finances and programs. The report will start with a high-level look at key financial metrics, including total revenue and expenses, changes in net assets, total net assets, and revenue and expenses less in kind. Change in net assets is equivalent to your surplus or deficits for the year. And total net assets provides a snapshot from your balance sheet of everything your organization had at the end of each fiscal year. This would be similar to an individual's net worth. Next, you'll find a series of pie charts that illustrate the high-level allocation of revenue and expenses across categories, which can be an easier way to visualize the changes. You'll find your workforce data next, followed by your attendance data. And the last 3 pages of the report show your program activity, starting with in-person programs, then digital programs, and all other programs. Now that you've seen an overview of the annual report, I want to show you how the example African Dance Company plans to use their annual report as they're planning a strategic planning process with their new executive director and new program director. First, because they do have 2 new staff members involved in this planning process. They're planning to look at the report with those 2 team members to help them get oriented to what has happened in the past few years. They'll also move into a strategic planning process with their staff and board, and they'll want to start that process by looking back at the big picture. For all of these purposes, for the data that they would need to help illustrate the big picture, including financial, staffing, and programmatic data, this report is perfect. I want to continue by showing you the next type of report, and that's trend reports. Trend reports analyze changes in your data year to year. This means that it can help you understand how decisions at your organization and changes in your surrounding environments may have impacted your finances and operations. What's unique about this report is that you can select between 6 different topics of areas of focus, giving you a number of trend reports to run. We'll look at the 6 different types of reports that are available. And first, you'll see the financial overview report that looks at revenue, spending, and balance sheet data. There's also a program activity trend report that looks at data about your programs, attendance, and pricing. The marketing trend report that looks at your marketing spending and return on investment. The fundraising trend report looks at your fundraising spending, return on investment, and giving trends for your organization. The working capital trend report analyzes the strength of your balance sheet and financial health. And finally, the workforce trend report looks at your staff, contractors, volunteers, and personnel expenses. Before we look at that report and how to find it, I want to circle back to the African Dance Company. They're still prepping for their annual strategic planning meeting, and we knew that they wanted a larger overview of their organization, and the annual report was helping them do that. Now they're hoping to get more trend data that helps them understand their year-to-year trends in revenue to help them evaluate their spending and explore their balance sheet. So for this type of need, we would recommend that they run a financial overview trend report. Now I'm going to show you how to find that report within our system. Back on the analytic report page, We'll select trend this time. And then once you select trend, you'll see a drop-down menu where you can select which type of trend report you'd like to run. Again, for this example, we're selecting the financial overview trend report. And once we select that, we would indicate which 3 years we would like the report to run on. Once the report runs, it'll look like this. I'll take a moment to go through each area of this report to see what we'll find and what the African Dance Company could potentially learn. The first section you'll see is the financial summary, where you'll find the data on their unrestricted activity. Unrestricted activity only includes revenue that is available for use in this fiscal year. Any revenue that is earmarked for future use by donors or intended to be saved is not included in this table. There are also charts that look at unrestricted operating revenue by source and operating expenses by functional grouping. On the second page for this organization, they'll find their balance sheet data and a graph that highlights the components of net assets. On the final page, they'll find expense information as well as some metrics. This includes some helpful definitions and formulas. And at the bottom of this page, there is a graph that illustrates their unrestricted coverage of expenses. This graph can help the example African Dance Company understand what this concept looks like for their organization. So when the example African Dance Company looks at their report, it'll help them talk about and understand how their revenue and spending has changed over time. And it could help them answer questions like, has their sources of revenue they depended on shifted, or has their spending kept in pace with their revenue? They can also look at how all of that has impacted their bottom line and net assets. So now that we've looked at trend reports, I want to take a moment to look at our next type of analytic report, and that is a comparison report. Comparison reports allow you to compare your organization with a comparison group that you create by selecting certain criteria. This is a useful tool for benchmarking your data with that of maybe similar organizations using data entered into the cultural data profile. When running a comparison report, you can choose to run a report on default criteria, or you can make customizations to have more control over the types of organizations included in your comparison pool. I want to take a moment to explore the concept of benchmarking and how it can be useful. Comparison reports can be used for benchmarking because they show how your organization is performing compared to the average for peer organizations. This can provide context for your organization stakeholders, including your board members, and deepen conversation about performance in key areas. Benchmarking, used wisely, can also be a great planning tool. For example, if you're considering a future for your organization's growth, whether that's through increasing your activities or hiring additional staff, or a combination of the two, you can use this analytic report to see the average earned and contributed revenue for organizations larger than yours, which can help you craft a plan or set targets to achieve your goals. Or if you're seeking to become more sustainable by planning for increased savings as an organization, comparing your peers may help you understand how organizations are achieving those goals. And again, that can help you craft a plan. There are 5 types of comparison reports available to run that somewhat mirror the trend reports available. They allow you to switch seamlessly from report modes. These comparison reports are financial activity, which compares common financial metrics across organizations, the marketing comparison report, the fundraising comparison report, the working capital, and the workforce comparison report. To run a comparison report, again, we're back at the analytics page and we would select the comparison option. For this report in this example, we're going to look at fundraising. So at the drop-down menu, we would select the fundraising comparison report. And then we would select the year to run it on. For comparison reports, you can only select one single fiscal year, and one of the years that you select must have data within the system. For this example, we'll select 2020. Once you choose the report in the year, the report is going to run on some default criteria. Our system will use background data that you've entered into the CDP as the basis for which to run the default comparison report. So if we were to run this report using default criteria, there would be 330 organizations included in our comparison report. To have more control over the organizations that are included in your comparison group, I want to show you how to customize your report to then explore what the report can then teach us. In the highlighted section, you'll see 3 sections where you can make customizations for a refined comparison pool. If we click on the total expense criteria, we can see that this organization's total expenses for fiscal year 2020 was roughly $211,000. Again, the default criteria automatically includes all organizations with a similar budget size. You are free to change the budget category either by selecting from predefined ranges or manually changing the minimum and maximum expenses for organizations to be included in your report. The next criteria is discipline and characteristics. Your options in this section include NTEE classifications, NISP discipline, and NISP institution types, or a taxonomy that the DataArts research team created that divides our data set into 7 broad categories. For this example, we're going to select community from the DataArts taxonomy. And then that final criteria on the main page, it filters by geography. You can choose whether to select by geographic boundaries or electoral districts. And again, for this example, we'll select by state and search for California. Now that we've narrowed down by budget size, characteristics, and location, we can see at the bottom of the screen that this report will include 43 organizations within the comparison pool. Here are a few things that we hope you think about as you're creating your custom comparison pools. In order to maintain the privacy of organizational data, you must have at least 3 organizations included in the comparison pool to run a report. If you create a selection criteria that is too narrow, check what year you selected in the report. Most organizations can't or do not enter their data immediately after the end of the fiscal year. So even though many organizations may have closed their 2021 fiscal year books, many organizations have not received their 2021 audits or may be in the process of entering their data. So you may find that your comparison group is too small, even though you may want the most recent data. And we recommend that you consider changing the year to 2020 or even 2019, where the overall number of organizations who've entered their data will be much larger. If you find that you've narrowed down by location and don't have enough organizations within your group, you can also choose to add geographic regions, which will give you a slightly wider group than just one city or county. And finally, there are multiple options for identifying by discipline or institution type. If the one you originally chose is too narrow, try adding additional options that are similar to how your organization describes itself, or use a broader category from the DataArts taxonomy again, which is a great method for dividing up the data set. I want to look at another example organization and how they may use the fundraising comparison report. The Example Arts Center, they're preparing a new fundraising plan and they want to understand their past performance a little bit better. They're specifically interested in how their spending on fundraising compares to their peers and how their fundraising efficiency compares to their peers. This would be their fundraising comparison report. And the first thing I want to point out is the layout of this report. For each row of data, the first column shows the information for your organization. And the other two columns, they display the data for the comparison group, starting with the average and then the median. The first section of the fundraising report shows high-level totals related to fundraising, including total contributed revenue, total fundraising expenses, and total expenses. The next section includes metrics that are calculated from your data. And since this is a comparison report, it includes that information for the comparison group as well. This report includes metrics like the percent of total expenses that went toward fundraising and the amount of contributions brought in with each dollar spent, which will address one of the questions that the example org had about their fundraising efficiency. Continuing on with the fundraising report, below the metrics section, there is a graph that shows fundraising expenses as the percentage of total expenses and as the percentage of total contributions. And the chart on the next page shows total contributions by contributor type. That includes board, individual, foundational, etc. And the number of contributors and the average contribution size for each category of contributors. Now, that's going to conclude our tour of the DataArts Analytic Reports. I do have another report to show you that's a great tool for benchmarking, and that's the KIPI Dashboard. KIPIs stand for Key Intangible Performance Indicators. This dashboard provides benchmarking scores ranging from 1 to 100 on 24 key performance indicators for your organization. The KIPI dashboard also provides a level playing field. You may be wondering what that means. Before scores are assigned to your organization, our researchers control for factors that may impact your indicators. I want to talk a little bit more about this. The KIPI dashboard helps organizations understand their financial and operating performance relative to similar organizations in key areas and takes into account your place-specific factors like population, demographics, or density of art organizations within your community. Even local factors like commute time in your area may affect your attendance. The dashboard also takes into account the characteristics of your local funding environment, like the level of state and federal government funding in your community, as well as organizational factors, like your organization's age, specific sector, target audience, your budget size, and the number of offerings, and even your ticket pricing. These are all givens about your organization or community that we know also affect performance. Our researchers have analyzed how each of these factors affect key performance, and we've controlled for those effects before we provide your score on each measure. The idea behind the KIPI and your KIPI score is that once you've controlled for all of the factors that I've just mentioned, whether your organization is doing well or doing poorly in key areas may be the result of things that are hard to measure, like program content, good decision-making, your brand strength, the relationships you've built with the community, your artistic and managerial skills, or more. The dashboard is isolating these intangible factors. I want to show you what the dashboard looks like. There are 24 indicators in total, and they are divided into 9 broad categories. We intentionally offer a large number of metrics, knowing that each organization will choose measures that matter the most to them. So when you find yourself exploring your KIPI scores, maybe think about your top 5 that matter the most to you and ignore the rest. It's also worth noting that the dashboard is only available to you. We do not share it with your grant makers. We really would like this tool to be a safe space for you to look and think about your organization. You can choose to share your KIPI scores with anyone, but we will not share them on your behalf. Each indicator you see, you'll find a score ranging from 1 to 100. These scores represent percentiles like an SAT score. So if you find that you have a score of 50, that means that 50% of organizations scored higher than you, and 50% of organizations scored lower than you. This is good to remember because many of us are used to thinking about a score as maybe a grade and could consider seeing a 50 to indicate failing. But in this case, it could mean that you're exactly where you'd expect to be given who you are and where you operate. Let's take a look at one example, KIPI. We're going to look at the return on fundraising. Again, this is a measure of how much you raise per each dollar spent on fundraising, similar to what the example organization was looking for in their comparison report. We find a score from 1 to 100. And when you click on the metric, you'll also see trends in the KIPI score over time. This organization, the example theater, is doing really well and a little better than its peers in this metric. If you're using the dashboard in conversations, it's great to celebrate your high KIPIs, but it can also be just as useful to think about why a KIPI score is high and what's working well at your organization, and how you may be able to capitalize on that intangible quality and use it in other areas of your organization. We also provide some trend information about the data points that sit behind the metrics to help you interpret what is driving any trends that you see in your overall score. For this metric, you can look at whether your spending is changing or whether the amount you're bringing in is changing, or a combination of the two. And finally, if your organization decides that this is a metric they'd like to focus on, there is information to help you figure out what you need to do to change or increase your score. We provide resources like articles that can help you on each outcome. In addition to the metrics themselves, the KIPI dashboard has a lot of helpful text about each metrics and how the comparisons are formulated. To get to your KIPI dashboard, again, returning back to your platform, your DataArts site, with one click, you will just find the performance indicators and you'll see a few of your KIPI scores. To get to your full KIPI dashboard, you'll click See Your KIPI Scores. You may be also wondering how you would use the dashboard at your organization. The dashboard is a great tool to understand and celebrate your strengths and identify potential areas of growth. It can be a really good process and practice to look at the KIPI dashboard together with your staff or board members as a way to frame conversations about what's going really well at your organization and where you may have room for improvement. Before we wrap up, I want to share a few resources and tools, and then we'll close with some Q&A for any questions that you may have. If you'd like to learn more about using data in general, we've developed a series of free online courses about data literacy. These are courses that you can take at any time, and they're meant to help you to learn data more effectively, all kinds of data. There are 4 courses currently available, and they cover different areas of your work. Specifically, they look at using data for decision-making, financial data essentials, using data to build relationships with your audience and donors, and using data in advocacy work. We also have a number of online videos on our Vimeo page. This includes excerpts from the content from the courses I've just mentioned, recording from many of our training webinars, and videos about how to utilize our platform. We also invite you to continue to learn with us. Here are some dates for our next series of webinars, starting with getting started with the CDP and another iteration of our data at work. I would like to direct your attention to the information that you see on your screen, and that is our contact information for our amazing support center. If you have any questions about accessing any of the resources that I've mentioned today, or just have questions about the CDP, please feel free to utilize and contact our support center. Help is free and available through phone or email, and they're open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern. I also want to just share a quick and brief announcement that our system is currently down and it's just temporary. But we do expect our system to be opened within the next few hours. So that's going to pause your ability to access some of these reports that we've just talked about just briefly. Once that system reopens, you have full access to run all of the reports that we've talked about today. We do hope that you stay connected with us, and that'll be helpful to stay updated on any announcements. We have many of our social media platforms, and feel free to subscribe to our newsletter. Again, this will keep you abreast of all the happenings at SMU DataArts. So that's going to bring me to the end of our presentation. I want to pause for a moment and give it back to my colleague Ben to see if any questions came in the Q&A, or if you would like to share really briefly about the support center. Ben?
Hi, Monica. So far, we don't have any questions, but if you do have any questions right now, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. I would just reiterate what Monica said, that if you have any questions regarding the analytic reports, the cultural data profile, your KIPI dashboard, anything like that, please reach out to the support center. We're more than happy to help. We can drop the link to our Vimeo channel in the chat as well.
I was able to do a couple clicks to bring us back to that page. And thank you, Rochelle, for dropping that link. We're going to remain on our webinar space for just a few more moments for any other questions that may come in. But if there are not any questions, I want to just share our sincere appreciation to be able to present to you all today. We do enjoy being able to talk to our organizations and hear from them, and some of the questions that you may have about some of our tools. With that, I'm going to shift it back to Kaylin. Thank you again.
Thank you, Monica, for a great presentation. I hope everyone learned something and is eager to dive back into it once the system is back up. Important to note, you don't need to have completed your required cultural data profile for the Cultural Investment Portfolio Program before you go run these reports. Your organization likely has years and years of back data that's already in the system. That said, the Cultural Investment Portfolio reporting deadline is May 31st, 2022. Most organizations are going to be required to report on their FY21, so we'll be entering their FY20. It means early June would be a great time to go in and run some of those benchmarking reports especially. We hope that we'll see you before then, though, because we have another training coming up with SMU DataArts on April 13th, where we will go into much more depth on the KIPI dashboard. And I will share a quick link to that in the chat. There's also a note in the chat that the DataArts system is back up and running. So if you want to go in and log in right now, go for it.
Thank you, Kaylin. I was going to jump in really quickly and share that. Yes, we are. It is open and there should be no pauses. You should be able to jump right into there and run those reports. And I'll take this reply for you, Ben, about our recording and the slides. We will provide those so that you can have that in a recording and a PDF of today's presentation. These were great questions. Awesome. It looks like we don't have any additional questions. Again, thank you for all of your participation, your comments, and your thoughts. They are so helpful as we share our tools and resources. We will shift it back to Kaylin to close our time in our webinar space, but thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to connecting with you as you explore those analytic reports, the KIPI dashboard, and some of our research.
That's it. Thank you, everyone. We will share the recording afterwards as well.